And she told me that her mother put her in the back of a station wagon when she was 8 years old, and she never saw her father again. And that's why now, as an adult, she's committed to making sure that no little girl grows up without her daddy.
I'm beyond words. Welcome to the Dan Bradbury Show.
I'm so looking forward to this episode, my friend. First off, I think it's a genius idea that we're going to talk about the theme. So normally we would have a legal theme, which is what this is, but we're drilling down beyond legal today into separation, specifically divorce, maybe death, disillusionment, whatever. And this is why I love the show, because I've never been married, never been divorced. I can say whatever the hell I want.
For the record, I think you pretty often do just say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. Well, that's because I hang out with you.
Right. Raise the bar.
Yeah. But you, my friend, you've been divorced.
I have.
And you're in a relationship, so you're going to be walking on eggshells this whole conversation.
I've been married, I've been divorced, and I've also been business divorced.
Yes.
So talking about the breakup of business partnerships
Yeah.
as well. So there's a lot of big lessons in here, which for those who are going through that or considering going through that, there's some big lessons in here, I think. And if you're not going through it or don't intend to, statistically speaking,
Oh, yeah.
both from marriage, but also from just business partnerships, that the failure rate it's very likely that it will occur.
One of the best pieces of business advice I ever got was from my mentor, George Fadul, down in Australia. And he said this to me. He said, do you want the Australian accent, by the way?
Yes, please.
He said, mate, everything ends, mate. Everything ends, mate. Everything ends, mate. That's the best.
Was he born in Wales? Or?
Yeah, that's what can I say? It's not my accent. Anyway, he said everything ends.
Right, and that's true. And start with the end in mind. So, a sad but very educational story recently. So, in the last couple of months, a friend of mine is going through a divorce, and he said, he was looking for a bit of support. And I said, what with? And he said, well, all of it. You know, the emotional side's difficult, clearly, the divorce process, but also on the business side, on the financial side. And I said, listen, I won't mention his name, but I said, listen, one conversation with me could be worth several £100,000.
Yeah, that's what inspired this topic of this show.
Right, and I don't normally make big claims on that, but let me back it up, and let me back why for people listening to the show, it could be worth a very significant amount of money. Is he's got a multi-seven-figure business that's profitable, so it's a successful company. So that is the most expensive asset that he and his wife own.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
So one part of divorce, because we're definitely not. I'm not equipped to talk about the emotional side. So from the financial side, it's a most valuable asset. But divorce lawyers only know divorce, the divorce process.
Yeah.
And when it comes to how do we value the marital assets for them to be divided appropriately, it's like, pass off, get a business valuation done. And that's when he needs, or if you're going through this process, you need somebody
like you.
Right, somebody who understands how businesses are valued, because ultimately there's going to be an independent valuation, but it's not like property, where it's like, comparables. There's so much variance.
Way more subjective.
Based upon nuance, and a lot of that information is going to come out of what the business owner says to the valuer, right? Yeah. And the information they provide. So you need to understand that in great depth, because the swing in valuation for a company such as his, which is worth several £1 million, the range could be over seven figures.
Yeah.
Right. So a few little nuances will make a big swing in the valuation, and it's important you understand that so you don't get overvalued, right, and then end up having to pay six figures more than you had to buy back the other half of the shares.
Or multi-7 or multi-8, right, depending upon how successful you are, right? Because there's no shortage of stories in the news of titans getting a divorce.
Right. I mean, look, it's huge. I mean, what was the Bezos divorce, the biggest one in history?
Was it 39 billion?
I think it was
37 billion?
Yeah,
like that?
37, 38. It's either way. It's a big old sum of money. I think it was $38 billion. And that was then, because that was Amazon stock, right?
Yeah.
It'll be a lot more now.
By the way, do you know why divorces are so expensive?
I've got punchlines in my head, but I think you need to deliver it.
Because they're worth it.
Right. Yeah.
Predictable, but always a classic.
Yeah. So look, you need to get it together. I mean, there's so much I want to talk about, Topher. We can talk about prenups. We can talk about all this, but let's get started with the news of the week.
Absolutely. So the news of the week is interesting. And this one is one where I don't even know if we have a conclusion on which one is right or wrong on this one.
Well, I think that's true. So this is from the billionaire who owns the Chrysler building in the US. And how is his surname pronounced? Is it?
Oh, I don't have a clue. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Michael. I'm going to call it Fuchs.
Yeah.
Fuchs.
Oh, have fun with it. Let's just say his last name. It's Fuchs. Yeah.
Yeah. And iTunes, don't go marking as explicit again.
Yeah.
Because that's a name. That's not as swearing.
Fuch.
Michael says you can fucks off. No. So anyway, Michael, I'm going to call him by his first name, called his ex-wife or his wife that they're getting divorced.
Yes.
Says she's being greedy because she wants to live like a billionaire. So they're having a very painful divorce settlement of more than 45 million, and his statement was that it reflected greed, not need.
Right. Yeah. Because she wanted like several of the homes and to have a travel allowance and all of these things she was accustomed to.
Right. And so I'm not trying to be diplomatic when I kind of say, look, I don't know who's right and who's wrong in this, right? Because to a certain degree, if you can't agree, that's what the courts are there for.
Yeah.
And so I'm very big pinch of salt, whatever you read in the media. But I will say, and I was one of the lucky ones, right? With my divorce, it was very fortunate. It was.
She was a class act. You were a class act. It was much cleaner than a lot of them are.
Right. So I'm aware that I'm very fortunate, and I'm sure most people, is my experience, don't have that. And I'm not even going to claim there was some certain process that was done that made that happen. I think
I think it boils down to the character. You're just two good people.
Thank you. She was great.
Her better than you.
Right. Yeah. I suspect she would also agree with that statement. Probably. So, but what I will say is, and this is true for marriage, and it's true for business partnerships as well, and this is slightly controversial in marriages, get a prenup.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. Now, you as an American, they've been prolific for a long time. They've not even been legit in the UK. It's only about 10 years. Because a good friend of mine got married. We got married about 2 years apart. Prenups weren't recognized in this country when I got married.
Really?
But they were 2 years later when he did. But now, to be fair to him, he's still happily married.
Must have been a good prenup.
Anyway, but the point is, why would you not figure out how it's going to end, as per your Australian friend's comment? So let's switch to business partnership. It's kind of like, I once heard it said, Topher, that any kind of contract, it's not an agreement. Sometimes they're called agreements, but they're not agreements. They're disagreements. I.e., it's about what happens when you disagree. Because if you and I have an arrangement that we're going to, whatever exchange of products and services is taking place, it's like, you're going to do this, I'm going to pay that, whatever it might be. This is like what we think our understanding is. But the reason we don't even need to look at the piece of paper unless there's a misunderstanding, unless one of us...
That's a great distinction, by the way.
Right. So it's about what happens. So it tries to keep you straight by saying, this is on paper what we've agreed, the specifics. So we can't say, oh, no, you said this, I said that much. Right? But actually, what happens specifically when you fall out? What happens in business if one partner wants to do less work? What happens if they get sick? What happens if they stop working in the business? What happens if they can't do it? A whole host of things. And so thinking about all the, maybe not all, but the most probable things that could go wrong, and go, what are the provisions in those circumstances, is a a huge swing.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be thought about. So whether it be a prenup, so I've got children from my first marriage. I'm in a long-term relationship, and if I were to get married again, Topher, there is not a chance in hell that I would do it without a prenup.
Okay, so how do you bring that up and make it a good thing?
Okay, yeah, good. I don't know how you make it a good thing. I just, from my first-hand experience, is I brought it up early, like very
in the dating
early.
process,
right? 100%,
Interesting.
100%, because it was so non-negotiable for me that I don't even think we were seriously dating. It was kind of like if I were ever to get married again, this would be a prerequisite. And
Wow, that's interesting.
some might call this manipulative. It wasn't intended to be, but to a degree, it was like, okay, I was also feeling her out, because if she's going to massively abreact,
Yeah.
I kind of go, okay, well, that tells you
Ding,
something.
ding, 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 ding.
Right?
Yeah,
Which
alarm bells going
which
off.
didn't,
Yeah.
Right? So that's going to tell you something. But also then it's not downstream. Then all of a sudden it becomes a big problem at the time when if there's a time then when you want to get married, right?
Yeah.
And then people, it'd be interesting if I get any abuse for this episode, because then people look at it and you kind of go, okay, I kind of go, I've got children, and it's like, how do you protect all parties? And it's a way, it's just a contract to say it's fair. I mean, marriage is a legal contract.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
another bit of paper that says, hey, in the event that this marriage doesn't work, this is what's going to happen.
I mean, honestly, it makes sense. There's two things that I think make sense in marriage. Number one, prenups. Number two, here's my other thinking: expiration dates. Think about it. If you had to renew your marriage every year, every 2 years, like it came up for negotiation, it'd be an interesting dialogue, wouldn't it? Right? It's like, well, we're getting up to our 2-year mark. Are we going to continue to do this, or are we going to exit?
Do you know what? I've got a vague recollection. There's some, it's probably some small culture, i.e. not massive populace, but I'm sure there's some place in the world where they do.
Yes,
where
I
they
think
do
you're right.
that.
Yeah, they renegotiate or something. But I think if you had that, it would save a lot of problems, right? Certainly, probably be on their best behavior 6 months prior to the renegotiation.
Right, so because there's the legal element, which we've spoken to, but even inside of that, it's kind of like, if it's done well, and I'm not just talking about prenup, I'm talking about any kind of contracts, shareholders agreement, it makes it clean, which means that you're less likely to fall out in the first place, is my belief.
But I think that's a great perspective, is that if the cleaner it is, the less likely you are to fall out. That's how you sell it.
Fail of the week. So
man.
these two people often get confused with one another. It's Kanye West, also known as Ye.
Yay.
There you go.
Yay. Yeah. Well, and by the way, his name is now Ye, so we refer to him as Ye.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. I can be on board, even though the news article itself on the BBC News website says
Still refers to
Kanye West
Yeah.
to pay Kim Kardashian $200,000 per month in child support
Yes.
as their divorce got settled. So,
Which, by the way, sounds like a lot to me, but to him, he might have even looked at that number and thought, I just got away with the best deal ever, right? Because $200K a month for him probably isn't much.
well, I don't know, dude. I mean,
Well, it wasn't much 6 months ago.
well, if I'm honest, this isn't even really the fail of the week, right? The fail of the week.
Is Kanye.
Yeah, correct.
Is Ye.
Yay. There you go. Come on. Okay, we've got to. I now feel like I'm the police calling you out on your misspeakings, which is that's a full-time job in itself, Topher. So I mean, how many ways could this guy screw up? I mean,
yeah.
I'm going to call it now. He will be bankrupt.
I will call it now. He deserves to be bankrupt.
Oh, that's quite a strong stance. All right, say more.
Well, listen.
I think I know where you're going, but how many fails of the week could we do for this guy? I mean, so
Every day we could have a fail of the day. With the guy.
right. I mean, look, him getting divorced, super celebrity couple, loads of money. Yeah, it's going to be an expensive divorce anyway you cut it, right? Okay,
Right.
and we don't know. We only know what the media tell us, so we can't even begin to assess right from wrong. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors, so we can't have any sensible judgment on that, right? Other than just
True.
being gossipy and
Yep.
bitching. But there's certain things where I struggle to find how it can be framed in the positive.
I have no compassion at this point in
I
time
mean,
for
so,
the guy.
so- yeah. So you go first. So where do you go?
Okay.
Fail of the week.
Well, we could even revert back to last week's podcast where you were talking about OVO, and you were like, "Yeah, they're fine. People are just being oversensitive."
Yeah, that's the energy company like saying, "Oh, put on a jumper."
Yeah. You can't afford your electricity, cuddle a dog, kind of a thing. But this one has gone beyond that, right? I think this has gone beyond just, oh, are we misunderstanding the guy? I think he's at this point in time. I think he's just. I don't think he's mentally well, actually. To be fair, right? Like I don't think we should be putting him on a camera at this point in time because I think he's kind of lost the plot. But beyond that, I think what he's saying is just at this point in time so vile. He deserves everything he's going to get.
It blows my mind. I mean, just off the top of my head, there was the whole White Lives Matter T-shirt wearing, and I don't know, Topher, because you're right. Maybe he's mentally unwell, but if he's not mentally unwell, i.e., if somebody who's qualified, not you and I, were to like do the appropriate psychiatric audit, they might find that. But if that's not the case, he doesn't have a psychiatric condition, like it's narcissistic. It's like attention grabbing.
Yes.
Right? Like I can't get my head around the White Lives Matter. And what was the one even more recently?
Well, it depends upon what hour you're asking.
I was going
me
to say
that
literally.
question.
I mean, sure,
Yeah.
this is in the last 12
Yeah.
hours.
Well, the one that
anti-Semitic
came out,
comments?
yeah, he came out with some massive anti-Semitic. He was endorsing an anti-Semitic movie about the Holocaust, and I don't remember the title of the movie, but he was basically endorsing a movie. And here's the thing, interestingly enough, I could think very well he may not even have watched the whole movie when he endorsed it and wasn't even aware. But it's still, he had plenty of opportunities to apologize, to clarify, and he just kept doubling down. Did you see the interview with him and Piers Morgan?
No.
It was uncomfortable. It was two things I got out of that. One is there's no remorse or sorrow for what he said. But number two, underneath his psychotic rants, there is a brilliant mind in there somewhere, but it's just very confused.
And look, to tying it back to small business owners, so we don't get off on a whole too much down the yay side. Here's somebody that's an Uber brand, and it kind of ties in with last week's podcast as well, Topher, when we're talking about marketing. It's like there's value, potentially huge value in polarizing your audience, in standing for something, for saying your opinion. But there's got to be a degree of common sense, right? Or consequence, or thinking through the risks related with saying some of these things. And that's why I'll say it now. He will be made bankrupt because all of a sudden he's losing all his sponsors. Obviously he's got divorced, and it's appropriate. Well, the court will decide, but it's appropriate that he's supporting his children, right? That's my personal belief.
I don't think he'll be able to support them. In
Correct.
fact, I think he'll be back in the courts.
And that's what will make him bankrupt.
Yeah, he'll be back in the courts having to renegotiate that $200,000, and he might be getting money from her.
Right. Which, by the way, is the why a lot of business owners, it happens simultaneously, like divorce and the business plummets, because of course their head isn't on their business, it's on the emotional, the traumatic event that is most people's divorces, right? So yeah, it's
By the way, how do we tie this back down to the business owner? I think there's one clear message here, and this goes back to some of the advice that I give people in the speech mentoring, which is never speak about things you're bleeding from. Right? So if you're going through something currently, don't be getting up on stage and talking about it, because you don't have that emotional control over it to be able to tell the story and get the point across without having the drama. And I think Kanye right now is bleeding from a lot of things metaphorically, and he's talking about it while he's still bleeding. That's not the time to be doing it.
Right, because, and this transitions nicely, Topher. Certain things you need a bit of time for perspective.
Yeah.
So, for the emotional healing, right?
Yep.
I know that that's true for most people, myself and people that I know that have gone through divorce, whether business or from a marriage, right? There's the emotional healing, but also you just get more perspective with time. And that beautifully leads us on to the hero of the week. So the hero of the week this week is my former business partner, my ex-business partner, Nick James.
Yes, I absolutely love the fact that you wanted to make him the hero of the week on this topic. It shows so much class, just on your part, but also on him.
Yeah, no, well, let me give credit. And he doesn't know this is coming, so
Right.
Hello, Nick. You're welcome. Right, well, and the reason why is he and I were in business, I don't know, 6, 7, 8
Well,
years
let's frame it. Before you guys were in business, you guys were best friends.
Right, great. So we got to know each other. We worked together. We worked for the same company. Like my only job I worked as an employee. That's where we got to know each other really well. So we lived together. We house shared, and I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding, and then he worked for me for a period and then he set up on his own. Then we had a few years working the companies. Then we put the two companies together.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And it exploded. The growth, like it grew,
The company exploded in growth. It didn't fall apart.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Well, yeah, we'll get the order of the timeline right. Yeah. So it trebled in, I don't know, 2 years or something like that. And then, it didn't fall apart, but we broke it up.
Yeah.
And we broke it up because ultimately we wanted different things. We put it together and we did get the growth. We saw the synergies.
You drifted apart.
No, we saw the synergies where we were complementary, but ultimately we got it to a point, but we wanted to go further.
Yeah.
Like most entrepreneurs, you don't stop, but his vision for the future and mine was very different.
Right.
Not a right and wrong.
Correct.
I'm so tempted to put in a joke here, but I won't. Not right.
Nick's cool enough; he'd probably laugh, but the audience might go, I don't know.
Yeah, Nick's probably saying he's cool enough that he could pull off the joke, whereas I couldn't. But not right and wrong, just different visions for where we wanted the business to go. Yeah. And it was causing problems, and we said when we got in, if this is going to cause a problem, we won't stay in business. So ultimately, we broke the company up, right? And so we don't get lost, I won't get into the legal nuances, but what I will say is when we got in, we were clear as friends, almost like we're not going to risk our friendship over it. But there was also a contract. We were clear about what would happen in the event of a business divorce, right? Yep. And we were going to stop working together. And we followed through on that. Now, I don't want to pretend like it wasn't uncomfortable, right? That for at the time it happened, it was very uncomfortable.
But there's a difference between being uncomfortable and being painful, right? And so I think that's an important distinction as well, right? Because so many breakups in business or in relationships, they're painful. Yours was uncomfortable.
Right. And I think in addition to that...
which is to be expected, by the way.
Well, of course, because it's significant change, right? And things need to get ironed out. But the reason why I'm making him the hero of the week is I actually heard him talking about it. I was at his office earlier this week. So I want to be clear. At the time, it was uncomfortable. And then it took a good length of time for it to fully heal, right?
As would be normal in any kind of a breakup.
Correct. And, but we spent the day together in a mastermind about a month ago. I was at his office earlier this week. We were both at the same High Rocks fitness event where Mark Lewis was, the hero of the week from last week.
By the way, we talked about Nick, but we did talk about his business. We should probably give his business a plug.
Oh, yeah. So Expert Empires, expertempires.com. And, Nick probably won't mind me saying this. Oh, what the hell? In for a penny, in for a pound. So he had a vision for doing the big events.
Yeah.
There was other stuff as well, but he wanted to do that, and I specifically wanted to stop doing that. I wanted to go small and be focused more on the boardroom, like the boardroom mastermind type, and working with large, more established businesses, larger small businesses that are kind of $1 million in revenue, B2B services, and like working in great depth.
Yep.
And Nick wanted to do big events and big name speakers. There's more to it than that, but that was a large part of the essence of the fundamental difference of direction. Right. And that's exactly what he's done. Yeah. I mean,
and he's done it very well.
Oh, I mean, look, reputationally, it's spectacular. Yeah. I mean, he always knew his stuff, but he's grown. I've no shame in admitting that he has grown I would have held him back. If we tried to stay together,
That's cool for you to
he
say.
wouldn't have grown as much as he has. It's impressive. Like, even though I don't want what he's created, I look at it now and go, that's impressive. Because for a period of time, we both shrunk, right? You took the business apart, the relative business parts got smaller.
Sure, yeah.
And then it built back up. And now, the guy's flying and has been flying for years. And reputationally, I would imagine many of the listeners have been to an Expert Empires event.
Yeah.
And
If not, they should.
yeah, correct. And actually, on a separate note, he does an epic job at getting unbelievable diversity of speakers as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like from all different backgrounds, angles, business stories. It's impressive, really impressive. And yeah, it really stretch my thinking. So
Let me ask you this: during that dissolving of the companies, what would you have done differently?
good question. Oh, that's a really good question. Probably not one to ask me off the cuff. I wonder what Nick. We should have a chat about this. I wonder what you would say.
Yeah.
I think the truth is, well, there's two parts. One is some of the things that we did prior to getting to the point. Like we should have called it sooner, right? So we'd already caused problems in the company.
So there was there was the separation already happening. Right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
but
We
you
were
didn't
already
bring it
a
up.
point apart, and it was difficult, and it was awkward, and yeah, because we had different views of where we wanted to spend
Yeah.
the money of the business and grow it, and that was already causing problems, and we left it too late. So part one would be I would have done it earlier because I think it needed to happen, and we could have done it earlier, and it'd been
Less uncomfortable.
correct. Okay, I was going to say more harmony. It would have been easier. It would have been more, oh, yeah, okay, great, we're done. Rather than it definitely being a bit tense for a while.
Sure.
Right? There was definitely not long, but there was definitely a period where we didn't speak. You know, it was like, okay, fine. Then the second element was it probably is on the emotional side because I think it's easy to say, but it's hard when your emotions are tagged, right? And again, I want to acknowledge him that we were good. And if I think about my ex-wife as well, good at when we have disagreements, like any adults do or any parents, co-parents do, it's behind closed doors, right? It's private, but we say what needs to be said and have the conversations and resolve it. We're not airing dirty laundry in public. And the same goes for Nick, is being like, yeah, just been impeccable. And that says a lot. And so I think there probably would have been I would have gotten some coaching around the emotional side. So I wasn't harboring any negative feelings or work through those emotions more quickly.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let's do this. Let's move on to the book of the week.
Book of the week this week is War or Peace.
Yes, by Jordan Jenkins, and this is one that pre-show we were talking. I was like, this one has to be the book of the week because it's so related to separation. By the way, Jordan is a divorce attorney, family attorney, specializing in collaborative divorce in the U.S. And she has gone on to become the most prolific writer on the subject of collaborative divorce. She's written, I don't know how many books at this point in time, but it's in the double digits. She travels all over the place speaking about that subject. And I had the benefit of meeting her many years ago before she wrote her first book. Like to say I was actually the inspiration, not the muse, right? But she was a part of a business development program that I was in, and we encouraged her to write the book. She has such a compelling story too, Dan, because when she was 8 years old, her mother put her in a station wagon and she never saw her father again. Like, think about what that did for her psyche at a very young age, never growing up with her father. And then she gets into law and starting to realize about divorce. And that's why she got to the point where she said, I'll be damned if I'm ever going to let another little girl grow up without her daddy. And that's why she's about helping people to get divorced and loving support. Like, it's amazing, Dan. She has, they have divorce parties. They have photographers that come in. They have it's just the most incredible thing, because the whole point about the divorce is that there's one, well, more than one, but if it was a single child, right? The most important element in the divorce is the children, and not traumatizing them and leaving it up to some judge to determine their level of happiness. And I will tell you that book would be so perfect for anybody who is looking at separating, maybe not even a divorce, but also like a business thing separating, because in the book, there are basic tenets of how do you separate with respect.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like chipping this in, 'cause it felt like it was coming up earlier, which is the term moral hazard. And I loved, I forget the specific what deal it was, but here it comes over. Warren Buffett was talking about one of the most important variables of him is avoiding moral hazard. In other words, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but you can't do good business with bad people.
Yeah.
Right?
By the
Doesn't
way,
matter on the contract.
do you know his secret for a happy marriage? I do.
Go for it.
I watched a YouTube video where he was talking about what determines whether or not you have a happy marriage. And he goes, it's not how much money you make. It's not,
I do know this.
You know, yeah. He said, low standards. I'm thinking, I'm a perfect marriage material.
That's a great punchline. So just to be clear, you're now using our episode on divorce as an advert for dating. Is that what we're saying?
Do you have low standards, poor decision-making skills, and love trouble? Call me.
Okay, I think we're taking this too far. I think we should get on with quote of the week.
Let's do it.
So, this is from Julian Hall. And Julian says, if your business partners aren't working as hard as you, it's not a partnership, it's a sinking ship.
I love that quote. And it's so true, right? Because how many times does the separation in a business start with, my sweat's worth more than your sweat?
Right? Well, and again, it speaks back to our comment before. It's like the parties, moral hazard is like the party, it's got to be good people. It's got to be good people that are committed. I better not mention names. I had this with a business partner this week, where there was a little bit of tension because of the ebbs and, of workload and performance. And I won't even say which direction it was. A bit of tension, but we spoke about it privately. And it was like, I need to get this off my chest. Blah, 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 blah.
Are you talking about me?
No, that's gross levels of unhappiness. Right. And he said, so we had this conversation, and ultimately we just kind of chunked up and said, okay. And it's ebbs and flows. So it wasn't that we ignored the emotion. It's like, hey, I've noticed this has come up for me. I'm feeling a little bit unhappy. It feels out of kilter with our arrangement. And there was acknowledgement from the accused party that it was out of kilter. And apologies. And then immediately when that was heard, the person that made the statement was able to go, and you know what? Big picture. Like, I know it's just ebbs and flows, and we're in a bit where right now it's just more of the work's falling to me and less to you. And we're all good. I just needed to feel heard. Right. So
that's a good point too.
And that's why, like, again, partnerships, like, yeah, both working as hard, but actually underneath that, if you've got good characters, good people, it's like you can give them the benefit of the doubt when these things occasionally come up.
Yeah. Which I think is a great way for you to wrap up the whole podcast.
I thought you were going to say, this is a great way for you to let me know that I'm going to be raising my rates. Anyway, so on that bombshell, as always, I hope this has been an educational episode, because if you want a better business, you need to be a better business owner.
Amen to that.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.